What if the invisibility cloak got stained in the wash from a red sock? Would it still be invisible? Would it still work?
Point. It's a very interesting. Yeah, would you just see like a red stained blob walking around when someone's wearing it? Kind of
Not
obvious.
even a blob, just somebody under a red stained like blanket.
Yeah.
Just like very obviously a person covered up.
I would hope that you take better care of one of the rarest magical items in
everybody's
the universe,
been
the Harry Potter
victim to
universe.
the old red sock.
All right, so Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. We get introduced to the Dursleys through McGonagall as a cat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get our first kind of impression of them, I suppose, which is not a good one anyway, but that's no surprise from what we come to find out.
Actually, I suppose that doesn't even... The movie picks up... We don't even get a sense of the Dursleys.
Yeah. McGonagall says they're like the most despicable group of muggles
Oh,
she's
that's
ever
right.
seen or whatever. I don't know what the exact word is, but...
Yeah, she begs for an explanation from Dumbledore as to why he thinks it's a good idea to be leaving Harry with, like, the worst muggles imaginable.
Yeah. Which, yeah, begs... It never really does explain in the movies why that is. I guess...
Yeah, I guess it's more foreshadowing in the movies, right? Like, because we see how despicable the Dursleys are once Harry's aged up after he's delivered at the doorstep there as a baby. But yeah, in the books, there's, like, preceding scenes and stuff, preceding dialogue to explain, that the Dursleys are not the greatest family and they, enjoy normalcy and routine. And obviously, a wizard baby being dropped off on their doorstep is, going to turn their world upside down, and they're not the type of people that'll handle that well. So we know it's ripe for disaster, sort of. But yeah, I guess the one thing that sticks out in that scene that sort of, has a throughput through the films too. I guess it doesn't really crop up till the end, but it's Dumbledore's Deluminator. They don't even refer to it as a Deluminator in the first book. They call it a put-outer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Do they, I guess there's no mention that it's... Because doesn't Dumbledore create it?
Yes, he's the inventor of that gadget or device. Yeah.
But they called it a put-outer, huh?
Yeah, put-outer. I don't know. Which do you prefer, Deluminator or put-outer? Deluminator just has a nice sort of, like,
good
magical ring to it. Yeah.
But yeah, what a... he makes a point in the scene of being pretty... undisclosed, or like he's kind of sneaking through the streets, like they have to remain
incognito.
Yeah, that's about... There we go. Yeah, they're trying to stay incognito, and then he just rips all the lights out of the lamppost, and they come flying towards him. Like, what?
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive to his whole sneaking around.
How to dox yourself in 5 seconds. Yeah. Absorb light. Like, what the fuck was he thinking?
That's a very good point, considering the steps that wizard kind has taken to keep themselves isolated from Muggle kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bit obvious. I mean, he arrives under, like, the darkness of night and stuff, and there's a better, I guess, description in the books about, it's a quiet night, and there's no hustle and bustle. Everyone's kind of in bed and snoozing, and so it's a good time for him to appear. But yeah, in the movies, it's a bit more of like a fantastical, this gray bearded, pointy hatted wizard just pops into the street and pulls out this cigarette lighter, and all of a sudden these orbs of these street lamps are, the light's getting sucked out of them and pulled in. It's a little bit. Yeah, if anyone's peering out their windows or something, they're like, am I dreaming, or is this for real?
Somebody pinch me. But anyway, yeah, aside from that, we get like I said, yeah, get a little description of the Dursleys, and then Hagrid comes in with Harry in tow.
Yeah. Yeah, with the motorbike, eh?
Mhm.
Sirius's motorbike.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting journey.
Well, where did he come from? Like, did they pick up Harry from Godric's Hollow, or?
Yeah, Dumbledore had tasked Hagrid with going to, the remains of the Potter house in Godric's Hollow
Right.
after Voldemort's attack,
Right.
and to get Harry, I guess, and to deliver him to
Okay.
the
So
Dursleys.
really, the first movie picks up like immediately after Harry's parents die.
Yeah, they're murdered on Halloween night. I can't remember the year, but yeah, it's Halloween night, and then basically, in the aftermath of that, Dumbledore gets wind of what's happened and sends Hagrid out there to
Pick him
to
up.
get him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, fetch quest for Hagrid.
Yeah, for real.
But I guess that's kind of Hagrid. Dumbledore always does that to Hagrid. He's always sending him on the fetch quests.
Oh yeah, and he just blindly accepts. I mean, there's a lot of there's deep-seated loyalty in that relationship between the two of them. Obviously, as we'll get more into, Chamber of Secrets was probably the biggest foundational turning point for Hagrid's character, I guess, and making him become what we know him as the keeper of the keys at Hogwarts and carry magical creatures.
Keys and grounds.
Keys and grounds. Yes.
No disrespect to Hagrid.
He's a Swiss Army knife around Hogwarts. That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was curious about your thoughts on the letter itself, because Harry, as a baby, is delivered with a letter that, presumably explains to the Dursleys what the fuck is going on, why they open the door the next morning to a swaddled baby on their doorstep. I was just curious, your thoughts on, I guess, how detailed do you think he was in that letter in terms of describing, why Harry needed to be there?
Yeah. I don't know. Dumbledore's a pretty cagey guy. Which is where...
Yeah, he holds info close to the vest when he needs to.
Yeah. And I don't know how much he'd be willing to share with a bunch of muggles.
True.
But I also... It doesn't really give them any reason to hold on to Harry without any justification.
Right, what's their incentive to... They clearly... There's a bad blood between Petunia and Lily that stems from way back, so they obviously want nothing to do with this kid.
Yeah, I think I would guess that they'd rather stick him in an orphanage or something.
Right, if that would have been a logical conclusion to them opening the door and seeing Harry, right? We'll, put him in the system or whatever.
Yeah.
So there had to be something in that letter from Dumbledore that was convincing enough, or at least they felt like their hands were tied where, okay, we have to do this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where their overall resentment towards Harry comes from too, the fact that they felt that they didn't have an option in this. This was forced upon them. Harry was dropped here, and they had hoped to leave this whole wizard nonsense behind,
right.
And then regrettably Harry shows up and they really can't get rid of him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even as despicable as they are, maybe that's where their redemption lies then. Maybe Dumbledore did air out the truth and explain what happened, why that needed to be the case. And they were they could have just as easily stuck him in an orphanage after Dumbledore left and got rid of him, but maybe that's the root of their redemption is we didn't send this kid to the slaughter, I guess, at the very least, which is a pretty low bar for being decent people, but I guess it counts.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting way to put it. They did do what was necessary to protect Harry.
Yeah.
Begrudgingly, I guess.
Yeah. And only what was necessary, I guess. They made
the bare minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess you have to give them some credit for that.
Yeah.
If it was explained in detail in the letter, and they decided we got to
Yeah.
do this.
I think I'd say yeah, he did tell them then, like for that reason, because otherwise I think they would have stuck him in a orphanage, drop him off at the fire station or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that would have gone against like everything Dumbledore believes in, kind of to give him all the detail.
True, but it's, special circumstances.
I
In
guess
fact,
so. Yeah.
totally unique because we're led to believe several times that Harry's the only living person that's ever survived the killing curse, right? So there would never have been a circumstance like this where Dumbledore had to make this decision.
Well, yeah. Let's jump ahead a little bit in timeline. So we get into number 4, Privet Drive. Dudley's birthday. He's got
36, but last year.
37. So yeah,
Spoiled brat.
yeah, what a jag. But yeah, so they go out to the zoo, and then we meet. I guess that happens a little differently in the books too. There's another.
Yeah, I mean, not like too differently, really. Dudley brings along a friend, Piers Polkus.
Piers Polkus. That's
Little Piers.
That's a tough name to grow up with. I feel like there's a lot of jokes that's ripe for laughs.
Yeah, it's a tough name for sure.
Yeah.
It's a tough name. But no, generally it plays out the same. I think they like stop for ice cream or something, either on the way there or the way back, and Vernon and Petunia buy Dudley and his buddy like these, like a 3-stack waffle cone with Moose Tracks ice cream or something, like primo cone.
Yeah.
And then they weren't even going to get anything for Harry, but like the worker that's selling the ice cream or whatever sort of gives them a look, and that guilts them into getting Harry this, the cheapest lemon ice lollipop or something.
Okay.
I just thought it was funny how it's like, they were guilted by this worker into getting Harry something so they don't look like complete assholes. But no, for the most part, like it plays out the same. The scene with the snake is a little bit different, I guess. There was something interesting to note when I was reading the books, actually, or rereading, I should say. There's a bit where after Dudley and his buddy Piers decide to abandon the snake's habitat because it's snoozing and just not doing anything exciting, so they want to move on to terrorize the chimpanzees or something. Harry approaches the snake's habitat, and all of a sudden it sort of opens his eyes and it's alerted of Harry, and it winks at him. So I just wondered whether there was some sense that the snake had of Harry's like innate ability to communicate with snakes, given what we know about Voldemort's piece of soul that lives inside Harry that gives him the connection to snakes and the ability to speak Parseltongue and everything. I just wondered if there was like, because the snake was so subdued with Dudley and his buddy, and as soon as Harry approaches, he's like awake and alert and starting to communicate with him and stuff. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I was wondering if that python even had any significance, like if it's a character or something down the line, because it's like, I don't know if it's just a plot device to establish Harry's Parseltongue and his, like you said, his connection to snakes through that, by way of that piece of Voldemort. But yeah, like it doesn't really, in the movies, that's all it offers. Like there's no later reference to the python, or like there not even anything, if there's any like downfall of it escaping from its enclosure there, or like does that even happen that way in the books, or is that just in the movies?
Yeah, it escapes its enclosure and it whispers or hisses like thanks to Harry
Right.
and says it's on its way to Brazil or something, or
Okay, yeah.
he says like thanks amigo to Harry. But no, in terms of deeper significance, I think the buck stops there in the books too. Like, and I don't even think like what you were saying about it establishing Harry's, connection to snakes. I don't even think that was the intended effect. Like, it was really just another instance of Harry accidentally using magic to get himself into like a tight spot. So yeah, I don't even think it's just funny, like, knowing what we know now, going through the whole series. It is interesting whether to think of it as like a bit of foreshadowing, but
Yeah.
I don't even think that was the intended purpose of that point, because there's no reference back to that snake in particular.
We get to see the kind of aftermath of that. Harry getting in trouble when they get home. And then the letters start coming in.
Rolling in from every
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah, from everywhere. I did think it was interesting. I saw in the extended cut, and I do remember this from the books, but in the extended cut, it has Petunia cracking the eggs with the letters inside. That's a great scene. I
That
don't
is a
know.
good
They
one.
shouldn't have cut that out. It's so quick and like didn't. It's not like it would have affected the runtime much, but yeah, no.
And
That was a
it
good
also
moment.
showed that like it was more than just owls
Yeah,
bringing letters. Like, there was other methods that like Hogwarts was using to get these letters to Harry.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. But anyways, they get overrun, and then Vernon takes them all.
We're going away, far away.
Daddy's going mad, hasn't he?
Oh man.
But yeah, so they go to. I know that happens. We get a little more of their journey to the lighthouse in the books, but
Yeah, I think they make a couple more stops along the way, if I remember correctly,
yeah,
like at like a motel or something before they end up on that rock in the middle of the sea.
right. But yeah, we get there, and then Harry's. I guess it's his 11th birthday.
Yeah, he would be turning 11. Yeah.
And then at the stroke of midnight, we meet Hagrid for the first time, busting down the door like an absolute
The big guy.
psycho, and then just apologizes. For
Yeah,
it.
totally
Like,
apologetic.
no big
about
deal.
it. Sorry to let the storm in. Gentle giant. Yeah, we really get that sense early on from Hagrid, right? That he's, definitely physically imposing, but just a sweetheart.
Yeah, just a lovable guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although maybe not so. We do get that impression from him, but it's like some pretty dark stuff going on.
How do you mean?
Well, he has a shotgun to his face.
Oh.
At which point he threatens the holder of the shotgun, and then bends it with his bare hands.
Well, he tells him to dry up. I don't know how
Yeah,
threatening
dry
that
up the
is.
old prune or something. As he said.
What's he gonna put him in a dehydrator? And
Yeah,
that'd
maybe.
be a brutal way to go, actually.
Or maybe
Just getting
put
all
him in
the
his
moisture
like,
sucked out of you.
dragon-powered oven. Dry him out.
Yeah,
But
put him
yeah.
in the ring with Norbert.
But yeah, he's pretty lax with his use of magic in that too. Like he's, the Dudley's tail is one thing, but using the fire is, or like starting the fire with his umbrella is just like a blatant, unnecessary use of.
Right, he's pretty liberal for a guy who's like not legally allowed to use magic anymore.
Yeah.
He's pretty nonchalant with his use of magic.
Yeah, and even outside of this movie too, there's no other instance of him using magic. Like
No,
he's around,
it's really just
he's
the first-
involved in magic, but
Yeah.
we never see the umbrella again past the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we don't really know about, like, the movie doesn't give much exposition to why he uses an umbrella versus every other wizard using a wand.
Yeah, but I guess we'll get into that when we'll go over Hagrid as a character anyway, get into his whole
Yeah.
backstory and stuff. But yeah, it's just in terms of using magic in front of Muggles too, like outside of Hagrid's restrictions, that's a pretty... I guess they're a bit of a special case when it comes to muggles. Because it's not like...
Hagrid's a special case?
No, the Dursleys.
Oh, sorry.
Like, using magic in front of them maybe isn't a very big deal because they're already aware. Like, there's got to be... The Ministry of
They're a
Magic's
bit
gotta
indoctrinated
have some,
into the...
Yeah. The
They
Ministry of Magic's
just
gotta have some
refuse
list
to
of-
want to face it, I guess, but they're
Yeah.
aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and you figure, like, if Hagrid has been banned from using magic, like, they'd probably, in the same way that they have the trace for underage magic, would they not, like...
Apply it to him.
Yeah, do some equivalent spell on wizard who have been outlawed.
Yeah.
Wizards who have been outlawed from using magic.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine he's not the only one. Like, there's
there's
got
gotta
to
be
be
some
lesser
other
sentences
case.
than just
Right.
send everybody to Azkaban.
Exactly.
Are the doors to the Leaky Cauldron just open on the streets of London? Like, a muggle just walks in there and grabs what they think is a beer, and it's fucking God knows what. Like
Right.
some dragon piss, or...
Well, I guess I have 2 points, I guess, to that. Like, I guess it could just be disguised as sort of like a regular muggle pub too, right? Because they have to go into the back room to activate, like, the entrance to Diagon Alley,
Right.
which wouldn't be accessible to the muggle that, happens across that room. They just see a brick wall and some garbage cans or whatever, and that would be that. But my other point is that in the books it actually describes that it seems to Harry as if whenever they approach the Leaky Cauldron, that him and Hagrid are the only ones that can see it, and the muggles that are, walking around on the streets of London at the time are, like, walking right past it as if it's not there. Like, it's almost as if it's enchanted so that they can't see it, in the same way maybe that Hogwarts is described as having enchantments around it and its sort of surrounding area to make sure that muggles don't
Stumble
upon it, yeah. Or
Okay.
if they are in that area, then it's, like, invisible to them. They can't see it, or it's not tangible.
Right.
So I think it's, I apply the same logic to the Leaky Cauldron here, where it's on the streets of London, accessible to wizards, but it's, for all intents and purposes, not there for any muggle eyes that are happening upon it.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so yeah, we jump ahead into Diagon Alley, and our first stop, I believe, is Gringotts.
Yeah. Harry's gotta get
Grouch's
his coin.
Yeah, he's got no Witcher contracts in front of him, so he's got to just go pick it up from the bank.
Yeah. And we discover that he is friggin' loaded.
He's rich, man.
He's got stacks on stacks on stacks
I feel like
of
when
galleons.
when you have money stacked up on the ground, that's how you know.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're loaded. It's like in Breaking Bad with the storage unit there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like the money's just
The
stacked
tarp
up
over
on
it.
the ground and it's waist high.
Yeah. Remember when Huel just, like,
Lays on top of it.
collapses onto it? Well, it does, like, given the quantity of money inside Harry's vault, does beg the question of how his parents were able to amass that kind of fortune. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we know that James was an Auror, and I would hazard a guess that it's a well-paid position in the wizard world, depending on,
Like,
there might be, like,
law enforcement
tiers
isn't
to
the
it.
best. Law enforcement's not the way to get rich in the real world, anyway.
No, but this Auror seemed like more of a specialized, like, terrorism kind of unit or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fucking
Like, there's
Delta-
there's like
the
magical.
Aurors are Delta Force.
Yeah. In my head, like, there's regular beat cops, magical law enforcement, and then Aurors would be, like, specialized department.
Right. His stop at Ollivanders is something that kind of throws me. Because it's such a ridiculous argument to be made, but there is some validity to it. That if the wand chooses the wizard, innately the wizard is the owner of that wand. So are they
Yes.
actually paying for the wand at Ollivanders? Like, if I already
They're
own
paying
that,
for their own property.
exactly, yeah. By nature, if it answers to me, it's already mine. So is Ollivander just like hemorrhaging cash? Like, he's just giving away wands for free year after year and just is buried in debt for the rent payments on Diagon Alley. You'd have to, but it's a pretty expensive place to
He's
have
just
your business.
hemorrhaging money.
Yeah. He's
Not lucrative at all. He's a man of the people.
I
doing
guess
service.
so. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you could look at it like that, or you could look at it like, this is the most savvy, smartest businessman ever because he's selling
making
people's
money on
property
other people.
back to
Yeah.
them.
Actually, that is a good way to look at it. Yeah.
You own this, but you owe me for it if you
Yeah.
want to take it from my shop
Little
today.
did you know it, this wand was specifically crafted for you, not by me, but you can throw me a couple of bucks for it. Okay, so Ollivander's just an absolute scumbag then.
That's how I like to see it. I don't know.
Okay. I like that. I'm okay with that.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't. I like Ollivander. I think he's a good guy, and if not a little bit of a crazed nut in terms of he probably has better connection with wand than he does with humans.
Yeah, he probably does.
Well, because he says like he remembers every wand he ever sold, right? Like the characteristics of them, to who he sold it to, like the length, like everything. So
Yeah, and he's been around. How long has he been around?
well, I was reading in the books that Ollivanders was established in 382 BC. So it is.
So this is what, 1990 something. The movies take place.
This would be like early 90s, like 91 or something. But yeah, he clearly a legacy operation, right? This guy's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
There's another wand maker that's mentioned, Grigorovich, who makes, like, I think he made like Victor Crumb's wand and sort of services like that, region of the world, I guess, those wizards. So it seems like it's maybe not like a profession that's super sought after.
Well, because it's too much goddamn competition.
I guess.
Ollivander's just got the market cornered.
Yeah.
And maybe that's his whole ploy. He's just giving these things away for free, and now nobody can compete with him.
Well, I always wondered, is he the one that's like crafting the wands, or is he just selling them?
I have no idea, yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing you're saying, that referring to him and the other guy, Grigorovich, as a wand maker. But yeah, I don't know if he actually does craft them or if he's just a retailer.
I guess I always had it in my head that he did craft them.
Yeah, probably. I wonder how
Where's
are
he
wands
source all the wood?
crafted anyway? Like, are they crafted in, a more muggle sense, I guess? Like, are they crafted using tools, or are they, like, charmed from a piece of wood? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you stick the wand on a lathe and carve it out, or do you just, like, flick your wand at a piece of wood and it becomes...
Yeah, I don't... your guess is as good as mine. There's not a whole lot of explanation as to the ins and outs of...
where they come from.
Of making wands, yeah. I mean, there's, not even that much on wand lore, or the details of wand lore, given its...
complexity.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so integral to, like, the plot. Namely the connection between Harry and Voldemort's wand, and that's like something that's still a bit ambiguous and sort of hard to understand, the complexity of that, the interaction between Harry and Voldemort's wand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's even less on like the actual making of wands.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's a good question. I mean, it's really just, like you choose I would assume there's some like woodworking, more muggle aspect to it. Like you
You'd hope
choose your
so.
tree and you have your components, whether it be unicorn hair
Dragon heartstring.
or phoenix feather.
Are those the three?
Yeah. And then, I don't know, you choose your core, I guess, and choose your wood, and
Off
away
to
you
the
go.
races, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess so.
Let the wood speak to you.
Yeah, I'd kind of hope it's a more traditional. Yeah, I'm with you there. The train pulls in. We get into the castle off the boats. Just an unnecessary
Trek on the Black Lake.
form of travel. Takes them way
It's
too
only
long.
the first years that do that
I know, and it's a weird.
form of getting to the castle.
Yeah, it just gets you there late.
Yeah, but the
Everybody's
first year's
waiting
kind
on
of
ya.
like doesn't. They're always the last ones there, anyways, right? Like all the other students are seated by that point, so I guess
I
they
know, but
kind
you-
of need to be staggered.
You got to feel bad for the students that are just absolutely starving, waiting for the feast to begin.
Yeah.
And they're like, they know that the sorting ceremony is going to take however
Another-
long,
yeah.
and they got to wait for that to be done to eat. So they're just, they're probably eating their fingernails waiting for the first years to show up.
Well, you don't think the house elves are setting them up with some appies, like
Maybe.
mozzarella sticks and chips and salsa?
Yeah.
And no, those are like
They
two
could be.
definitely wrong choices. I'm trying to think of like British appetizers.
Yeah. Probably neither of those. Beans on toast or something.
Ah, yeah. Beans on toast.
On the subject of inconvenient processes, the sorting ceremony, I have to assume this is just in the movies, but the sorting ceremony is a debacle. The order of the students coming up, it's crazy. Like, not doing it alphabetical is insane. First of all, like, set aside anything else, but doing it with seemingly no rhyme or reason, including that, is crazy. Like, is it alphabetical in the books? Tell me it is, because otherwise I am writing off this series.
I believe it is.
Okay.
I can't confirm that without a shadow of a doubt, but I'm pretty sure it's alphabetical. But I don't really see your point of view or your perspective that much in terms of like why that's such a bad thing that they didn't do it alphabetically. It doesn't really
Well,
change anything if they don't do it alphabetically.
Except you don't know when your turn is.
But
You're
maybe
just, like,
that's a
being
good
called up
thing
at any
because
point. But what if I'm trying to
somebody
prepare
crumbles
my...
under pressure, runs out of the Great Hall before they're sorted. I can't do it. Get me out of here.
Well, yeah, what if I'm worried about being sorted into Slytherin and I gotta make my peace with it? And
Well, you make your plea to the sorting hat at that point. It takes into
yeah,
account
but I gotta
your...
get my words ready. I gotta make the case for myself.
Oh, I see. If you're the first one called, then...
Yeah, sorting hat's just like, no, I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
Let's get this show on the road. We gotta get going here.
Fair.
I wonder, does that happen to anybody outside of Harry, really? I guess it does, because he gets the tip that you can pick. Who tells him that?
Yeah, well, I think...
Is Dumbledore? That tells him, like, the sorting hat takes into account your choice?
Yeah, I think later on, whenever Harry is questioning Dumbledore about the sorting ceremony and
Yeah.
why he wasn't placed into Slytherin, because he's, like, having doubts about why he was placed into Gryffindor to begin with. This is
Yeah.
probably when, like... I'm thinking this is from, like, the fifth, maybe, or it might have even been in
No.
the second book.
I think it might be in the second,
Yeah.
I think it's when he's in the hospital wing at the end.
Where he wonders why he wasn't sorted into Slytherin, given his connection to... Because his connection to Voldemort becomes more apparent in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, I don't think it doesn't happen in that way, I guess, to any other student besides Harry, but I'm sure there's like internal dialogue that's going through someone like Hermione's mind where it's like, okay, Ravenclaw seems like a logical choice for me because, I'm obsessed with learning and bettering myself in terms of brain power and stuff and reading and all that. So it just seems like Ravenclaw's a natural choice, but there's, people are complicated, so it's all about which traits you value the most, I guess. And I guess that speaks to Hermione's character too. Like, she clearly had it in her head that despite her priding herself on her smarts, she still values traits like bravery and courage and loyalty and stuff above intelligence and cleverness. And
Yeah, that's true. That is kind of a big overarching question mark with Hermione's characters. It kind of does seem like she should have been in Ravenclaw, but you're right. There is more to it than that in that internal dialogue.
yeah, multifaceted reasoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, interestingly too, given your question about Harry's interaction with the Sorting Hat, the hat takes a while with Neville too in the books, which isn't really touched on in the movies, which speaks more to, knowing more about his character now, looking at the series as a whole. The fact that Neville could have been the chosen one just as easily as Harry could have been. It's interesting that the hat takes a while with Neville to kind of figure out like what's the best place for him, because in the books it's described that Neville's very committed to the fact that he's gonna end up in Hufflepuff, just because he's kind of like he's not super smart, he's not super brave, or he doesn't perceive himself as those things, and he's not an evil bastard that belongs in Slytherin, so he figures like he's content with the fact that he's going to end up in Hufflepuff. But then clearly like the hat sees something in him that comes out later on in the series after he's discovered his innate bravery and stuff that speaks volumes about him early on, I guess, that we don't really see come to fruition until later.
Well, after the feast, we kind of move on to... They go back to the common rooms, everyone gets a little more settled, and then we pretty quickly get into classes, and I think potions is the first class.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of subliminal foreshadowing in the dialogue between Harry and Snape in the first potions class.
Yeah. You wonder if Snape is obviously he dislikes Harry. That's no secret. But it's funny.
Obviously.
But it is funny that in their first interaction, Snape scolds Harry and takes points from Gryffindor because Harry is taking notes.
Yeah.
Like, it's specifically because he's paying attention to Snape that Snape singles him out and kind of tears him apart with those questions, even though, or thought, well, it tears him apart with those questions, thought, I guess nobody would know, but of course Hermione is too studious to let those slip.
Yeah, he must be so annoyed at, I know he just kind of ignores her and disregards her shooting her hand up at every question he asks, but it's just funny how it's like he's asking these tough questions that he knows that there's no way these first years are going to know.
Yeah, it's probably questions that, he would ask a sixth year in the same setting, trying to belittle them.
Exactly,
and, knowing that they wouldn't know, and then, this 11-year-old girl is...
Yeah, Hermione's just beyond her years. Yeah. But yeah, no, in terms of the foreshadowing, there's that line where Snape asks,
"Tell me, Mr. Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?"
And Harry's obviously oblivious to the answer, doesn't know what to tell him. And if you read between the lines... there's actually some pretty significant symbolism to what Snape is telling Harry here.
Okay.
That you wouldn't really know unless you delve deeper into the language of it. So it turns out that asphodel is a type of lily that was once thought to grow in the underworld. And in Victorian flower language, asphodel symbolizes "my regrets follow you to the grave."
Okay.
And wormwood is a plant that symbolizes absence and bitter regrets in Victorian flower language. So basically, putting those two things together, we can understand that Snape first asked Harry Potter about this infusion because he was basically in a roundabout way saying that he was sorry for what had transpired with Lily.
Right. Yeah.
Like he was sorry about how her death had played out, and it was his way of apologizing to Harry in a cryptic manner, I guess.
Right. That's interesting. It's also like, because he says, what would you get if you mix them together, right? Like, as a result.
Yeah.
The result of that is, like, his state of mind constantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's his whole, he's, like, describing his personality. So we move on to our first flying lesson. And as it turns out, Harry's a fucking ace in the sky.
It makes sense that he's good on a broom, I guess, given that there was a photograph or a postcard or something that Lily had sent at one point to Sirius, I believe, because whenever Harry was young, Sirius buys and sends Harry this like toy broomstick. And Harry's ripping around on it through the house and stuff, and Lily's writing about that to Sirius. So clearly, like early on, even as a little tyke, Harry was, he was destined to be a flyer. So
Okay.
it's in his blood.
Yeah, I guess so. Even with James was a ace flyer, Gryffindor seeker.
Yeah, renowned seeker. Yeah.
That flying lesson certainly shows his ability and results in him being the first, what was it, the first, this is a tricky sentence to say, the first year Gryffindor seeker in over a century or something.
In a century. I'm pretty sure it's a century. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unprecedented for sure. So yeah, McGonagall witnesses, obviously, Harry's retrieval of the Remember All once Malfoy decides to rudely dispose of it. And offers Harry, spot on the Quidditch team. And then we get a scene later on where Harry gets something in the mail at breakfast. And, I mean, it's pretty obvious when it's dropped on the table what it is.
Can't really be anything
If
else.
it's shaped like a broomstick, I think it might be a broomstick. He unwraps it and reveals it to be a Nimbus 2000.
So the first flying class scene where we see Harry on a broom for the first time is sort of hilarious to me for a couple of different reasons. On one hand, it expressly states in the Hogwarts acceptance letters for first years that they aren't allowed to bring broomsticks. That's why in the class all the students are using broomsticks provided by the school. And on the other hand, McGonagall sees Harry flying for probably a total of 5 to 7 seconds before she rushes downstairs outside. Harry gets off his broom. She's like, we need you on the Quidditch team. She brings him inside to meet the Quidditch captain, and all of a sudden, he's this golden boy seeker for the Gryffindors. So it's just the way that plays out is sort of like, McGonagall throws her morals out the window because she's willing to do whatever it takes to win the Quidditch Cup this year.
Well, yeah, is it even a Quidditch thing, or is it just a Slytherin thing?
Right, she just can't stand the fact that Slytherin has beat Gryffindor. I think in the books it states that for the last 6 years or something, Slytherin has won against Gryffindor for the Quidditch Cup. It's either the Quidditch Cup or the House Cup. But
Probably
either way.
both, right? Because aren't
Maybe
they
both.
kind of
I mean, the rivalry
integrated?
is ripe between those two.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. Like,
Yeah.
clearly McGonagall wants to win bad.
Yeah, she's getting that trophy no matter what.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I didn't know that first years weren't allowed to.
Yeah, it's described in their letter that they're not allowed to bring broomsticks. I don't know why that rule, are they just like, Quidditch is a dangerous game and it's
I
11-year-olds are too young to be put in a risky position like that?
Yeah, because I guess there's no reason you wouldn't need your own broom unless you were playing Quidditch. And
Yeah,
first
I
years
don't
aren't
think you do
supposed
need your
to.
own broom. I think the school, I think it's described that some of the players on the team use like the school. I'm pretty sure Fred and George use the school brooms.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
there's reason to
There's
believe
no
that Harry
precedent
could have
then.
just used, a clean sweep or whatever the brands of brooms
that
that
what
the
it's
school
called?
has on. I think clean sweep is one of them. Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
But yeah, so it's just, McGonagall went above and beyond to make sure that Harry was in the best position to succeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely some favoritism shown there for sure.
No kidding.
So we make it to Christmas morning. Harry's first probably real positive experience with Christmas.
Yeah, otherwise it's probably just the same situation as Dudley's birthday. Like,
Yeah.
attention's just on the other side of the room and he's cooking breakfast.
Yeah, he gets some hand-me-downs from Dudley, some ripped underwear, and Dudley gets a new drone, four-wheeler, PlayStation 5.
Well, it's all made up for at that Christmas morning. He gets basically the best gifts anybody could ever ask for.
A jumper from
A
Holly
jumper
Weasley.
from Frostbite is exactly what I was thinking, yeah. It's like number one gift
Yeah,
of all
screw
time.
the invisibility cloak. Jumper is what you want.
But yeah, jokes aside, jumper's pretty sick, but the
Well,
invisibility
actually, just before you get too much into the invisibility cloak, in the books, I think Fred and George make a comment about how Harry's jumper is nicer than the rest of theirs. Saying that, like, oh yeah, she clearly,
put
because
in
he's
some extra
not
effort
her
for the
son.
chosen one.
Yeah. Special treatment.
That's pretty awesome, actually. That tracks too. Like, I'm glad that's mentioned in the books because that like perfectly makes sense.
Yeah.
It's so in line with her character.
A little more intricate stitching or something like that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But
no,
yeah, the invisibility cloak, like hard to ask for a better gift than that, especially as a rebellious youngster.
Absolutely, yeah. Harry's nature, it's the perfect gift, I think.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's of course I mean, I guess I don't want to get too far away from Christmas morning yet. I did want to talk about how important that would have been for Harry, and it's really like it would have been so meaningful that Ron had stuck behind in the castle. Like, obviously not a choice of his own. His parents were visiting Charlie or Bill, I guess, and
yeah, I think they were in Egypt at the time, or had gone. Or sorry, no, Egypt was in the second movie. I think he was working. What's that?
They go to Egypt just before they go back.
Yes, Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah. Sorry, yes, my mistake. Yeah, I guess Romania. Like he would have been. Charlie was working with dragons. Did they go to visit Charlie or Bill?
I don't know. I don't really
remember.
I don't really know who Charlie is. He's not in the movies at all. I think his character is kind of relegated to Bill. Like, they just kind of combine the two for the sake of the movies.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's mention of Charlie in the movies. No,
that's funny because Charlie actually has a special inclusion in the first one, in Philosopher's Stone. There's a sequence where after Hagrid receives Norbert, they decide that it's probably not a good idea for Hagrid to be keeping a dragon in his wooden hut. So they have the bright idea to reach out to Charlie because of his work with dragons in Romania. So they write to him. He writes back, and because like dragon breeding is illegal in the wizard world and stuff, and you're not supposed to, like, it's illegal for Hagrid to be in possession of a dragon egg.
Like they're an endangered species, for lack of a better
Or protected,
term.
or
protected species. Maybe
exactly. So they have to. Charlie writes back to the trio that he'd be happy to take in Norbert, but they have to do it under the cover of night. So they coordinate to meet atop the tallest tower at Hogwarts at midnight. It's not directly mentioned that it's the astronomy tower, but I believe that's the tallest tower.
But yeah, they meet Charlie up there. So he flies in on a dragon?
Yeah, him and a couple of colleagues or whatever take Norbert away. They sneak up. Him and Hermione sneak up under the cover of the invisibility cloak, and go deliver Norbert, and then come back down from the tower. But at that point, they had forgotten to put back on the invisibility cloak. So when they get down the stairs to go back to the common room or whatever, they're met by Filch, I think, and he reprimands them, and that's how they end up getting detention in the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid, where the whole scene plays out with the unicorn blood. And
yeah, the invisibility cloak really does become an essential piece. I mean, obviously later in the franchise, but later on in this movie, it's the catalyst for them finding out about the Philosopher's Stone. They wouldn't have been able to do that without, being able to pull the invisibility cloak over them and get into the restricted section and find the Mirror of Erised and all that kind of stuff. That, without the invisibility cloak, that probably wouldn't have happened.
But yeah, the mirror itself, I wanted to talk about the description in particular that's inscribed on the top of it. When read backwards, it says, "I show not your face, but your heart's desire."
Okay.
So I thought this, perfectly encapsulates the purpose of the mirror itself, or its sort of inherent power, I guess.
Right.
The answer to, the final climactic moment where Harry is trying to decipher in the final chamber how to get the stone before Voldemort does. He kind of makes that realization, right? It's the one thing he needs to get out of that situation, but he's not doing it for the purposes of using the stone for himself. He's just, he needs it. It's his heart's desire to get the stone, to keep it from being used by Voldemort.
Which, that is kind of a, was that the intention? I guess, no, the Mirror of Erised was made before the Philosopher's Stone was a consideration.
That's an
those two
interesting
weren't
notion.
made in tandem, were they?
I think that it's another ingenious creation by Dumbledore to further manipulate a magical object for his own ends. I think the mirror probably predates, or not necessarily predates. I'm sure the mirror was a separate object from the stone. They weren't necessarily connected.
Right.
But I think at a certain point, Dumbledore, needed a way to hide the stone once he asked Hagrid to retrieve it from Gringotts and bring it to Hogwarts.
Right.
And, Dumbledore in his cleverness decides to hide it in a cryptic way so that it can't just be easily retrievable by someone with ill intent like Voldemort.
Right, of course.
So yeah, I think that they were two distinct objects at a certain point, and then Dumbledore found a way to kind of merge them to protect the stone.
Because the stone, we don't really know how old the stone is. And I don't really understand, has Nicholas Flamel been using the stone all this time? Because he almost got to 666, right? He'll die just before his 666th.
Almost hit the number of the beast.
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened to him. Burst into flames or something when he turned 666. Well, it's funny because his wife was 668, so she had actually
passed the mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
She had outlived him.
Well, okay, yeah. So had they been surviving off of other means, or had they been surviving due to the stones?
Yeah, its property to prolong its, the elixir of life. So yes, they had been drinking a potion that was, imbued
Derived
with
from
the stone and using that to extend their life.
Right.
Yeah, the Philosopher's Stone is a weird one to me. There's a lot of inherent power in it with the golden touch and the immortality, but I just don't think riches and immortality are, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, are you going to look back on a life that's full of materialistic riches and you've lived so long that you're not capable of doing anything more, like old Nicky Flames living to 665, and he's just like, every day is another knock at death's door. It just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Well, it sounds like you would have been the perfect candidate for getting that stone out of the mirror.
Exactly. No selfish purposes here.
Let's jump ahead a little bit towards the end of the movie, towards their encounter with Fluffy and subsequently the rest of the trials that lead them to the Philosopher's Stone.
Yep.
I know this section in particular, this might be the biggest departure from the books in terms of, like, obviously there's a lot of stuff in the movie that's not added, or there's a lot of stuff from the books that's not added in the movie, primarily for time's sake. But in this case, this was a largely different retelling of events, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd hesitate to say largely different because it is generally like the three tasks or the three challenges we see in the movie, being the devil's snare, the flying keys, and the chess, are all in the books as well. There's a couple more that are added in there as well. So it starts with devil's snare, then the keys, just like the movies. And then I believe there's the chess after that. And then there's a troll trial, which was supposed to be Quirrell's, contribution to the defenses.
Right.
But they just skip over that in the books kind of because since Quirrell has already made it to the final chamber, he's already subdued the troll.
Right.
And since that was his contribution, like he knew, he was experienced taking down trolls, like he knew the best way to eliminate it. So they didn't even have to, Harry and Hermione didn't even have to deal with it at that point. And I say Harry and Hermione because Ron was already incapacitated.
So they just left him there.
Yeah.
Like Hermione doesn't stay back with him. They just ditch him.
Yeah.
We'll be back for you if we live.
It was either that the troll might have come before the chess, and then they abandoned him to move on to, which was another, in addition to the troll trial, in the books they also had Snape's contribution to the Stone's defenses, which was much more of a logic puzzle.
Right.
It was a series of, it was kind of like, picture like a long, like, Game of Thrones style feast table or whatever, with, I think there were 7 potion bottles along the length of the table. And then there was like a scrap of parchment or whatever that had like a riddle on it that basically described which potion you had to drink to allow you to progress further to the final chamber, and which potion you had to take that would allow you to go back if you needed to.
Oh, I see.
Like back to the start of the series of trials or whatever, and then
Mhm.
you know, the other ones were deadly, or like you would perish if you picked one of these ones that had poison. And Hermione remarks that a lot of the greatest wizards haven't got an ounce of logic and that they'd be stuck in here forever. So it's kind of funny that, like, you know, after this humongous boa constrictor like plants, after these like flying keys that'll tear you to shreds if you stay in there for too long, after these, you know, hugely animated chess pieces that will, you know, crumble you if you get in their way. It's just reduced to like pure logic at that point.
Picking
like
the right chalice.
Yeah. Just deducing based on the clues you're given from the riddle on the parchment, which potions are the right ones to pick. So obviously, like, Hermione excels here.
Right.
Just because, you know, it's simple for her, but she does bring up a good point about the irony of, like, you know, they picked this, or Snape designed this challenge for the simple fact of, like, a lot of wizards just don't have the capacity to logic out what the solution would be here.
Right.
So they'd just be pooched at this point. Like, they'd be stuck. So yeah, whatever. They deduce the riddle, and Hermione ends up taking the potion that allows her to go back. She goes back for Ron.
Oh, okay,
And then and then Harry takes a potion that allows him to move on to the final chamber, and that's where he comes face to face with Quirrell.
Yeah. Freakiest man alive, even without.
Yeah. They even they describe a couple of points like a stench coming from Quirrell, like just like the Voldemort's like rotting corpse.
Death.
Yeah.
Smell the death on him. The most jarring part of that scene is that Harry is 11 years old and kills a man. Like, pretty dark, as much as credit is given to
Yeah,
like
straight up murder.
Prisoner of Azkaban and the later movies, that like it gets darker and a little more these kids have to deal with some bigger things, but Harry literally commits murder in this.
Cold-blooded.
I don't know about cold-blooded, but it's certainly murder.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess
It's lukewarm-blooded murder.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's sort of unintentional, right? Like, he doesn't know he's gonna kill him.
He knows he's gonna. Oh, he absolutely knows he's gonna. Because remember, Quirrell is like strangling him on the stairs there, and is probably gonna kill him. Like, yeah, this is not to say that this murder is, you know, completely out of the question. Like, it is self-defense, sure, but he's strangling him, and then Harry like tries to push his face away, and then he burns him
he's
for the
resisting.
first time. Yeah, and then Harry runs over to him, sticking his like Thanos dust hands on Quirrell's face, and just vaporizes them. Like,
but I don't know if he thought he was necessarily gonna kill him. I just thought that, like, it was more of a defensive, like, this is doing something. This is causing him to, like,
die. Yeah.
Well, you know, scream in agony and causing him some discomfort.
No, yeah.
So,
no problem, man. Scream in agony, whatever.
or maybe he was just resigned to the fact that he was fine committing murder.
I
Maybe
think that's
it was
more
just
the
like,
case.
this is Voldemort. You know, maybe this is my destiny already.
Yeah.
I gotta defeat this guy. Whatever it takes.
Yeah. Well, failed on that front, I guess. Or failed at that
Well,
point. Succeeded
temporary
later on.
victory. Like, he's still reduced back, because Voldemort is basically, I can't remember exactly how he describes himself at this point, but like a mist or something almost, like a...
Yeah, well, he's like a specter. He's like non-corporeal at this point.
Right. Yeah, like he's feasting off his host victims to give him some physical form to maneuver around in.
Mm-hmm.
So after all is said and done, Quirrell's been turned to dust, and Harry has been rescued from the chamber by Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
they're in the hospital, and Harry and Dumbledore are having a conversation, kind of tying up loose ends, and Harry's asking some burning questions that are still kind of, he's confused about the details on, in terms of Quirrell and Nicholas Flamel and the stone and all that. And Dumbledore tells Harry the stone was destroyed, obviously after the events of what happened in the final chamber between Harry and Quirrell. And Harry asks Dumbledore what's going to happen to Flamel, given that, his only source of life at that point was the elixir from the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And Dumbledore says, "Oh, you know about Nicholas. You did do the thing properly, didn't you?" I thought this was a really poignant quote.
Wait, this is in the books, right? Not in the movie.
This is in the books,
Okay,
not
yeah,
the movie.
yeah.
And I thought it was a very poignant quote because it's basically showing that Dumbledore knows a hell of a lot more than he let on, and it seems like this whole thing was just like him putting Harry to the test, testing his abilities at this point in his life to prepare him for the inevitable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's even like more to that towards the end of the book too. Harry is speaking with Ron and Hermione, and this is the quote he gives. I'll read you the quote, and you can give me your thoughts on it after.
Mm-hmm.
He says, speaking about Dumbledore, "He's a funny man, Dumbledore. I think he sort of wanted to give me a chance. I think he knows more or less everything that goes on here, I reckon he had a pretty good idea we were going to try, and try meaning try to
Get the stone
before Voldemort did. I reckon he had a pretty good idea we were going to try, and instead of stopping us, he just taught us enough to help. I don't think it was an accident that he let me find out how the mirror worked. It's almost like he thought I had the right to face Voldemort if I could."
Interesting. So yeah, it does. It makes sense with Dumbledore's character and how. I don't even want to call him a teacher necessarily, because he doesn't ever really teach Harry. He just throws him into situations to learn for himself.
More of a mentor than a...
Not really,
teacher?
though,
You don't
because
find
it's
him a mentor?
very indirect. Like, nothing that Harry learns ever comes directly from Dumbledore, including in this case and, like, how that's described. I mean, he explains to him the purpose behind the mirror, but like you said from the what's inscribed on it, Harry could have figured that out if he just read it backwards,
Yeah.
I guess. Dumbledore basically tells him the same thing.
But Harry's not the most clever kid.
No,
He
he's
needs
not.
things
He
spoon-fed to
definitely
him a
doesn't
little
have
bit.
the cunning that Slytherins have.
No. Maybe that's why the hat decided not to put him into...
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not
part
quite
of it,
cunning
but-
enough. Sorry, bud.
Yeah.
You're brave, but your ability to think on your feet, I don't think so.
But that does make me question our earlier conversation about how much Dumbledore had told the Dursleys about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is that cagey with Harry and that, like, unwilling to share directly. So it makes me wonder if he would be, in that circumstance, is he willing to share with the Dursleys just because he has to, I guess.
Willing to share what? Like that
The true
Harry's the
details
chosen
of-
one?
Well, not
'Cause
necessarily
I'm not
that,
even
but just like the
sure.
protection, how the Harry needed to be with the Dursleys in order to be truly protected.
Yeah.
That's not something he would ever explain to Harry, but it is the kind of thing that he would explain to Harry through a series of events like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that wasn't in the movies, because that really does establish Dumbledore's character. Maybe not immediately later on, but definitely towards like the 4th, 5th, 6th
But-
movie and book.
I also wonder though if he didn't know, if Voldemort if Dumbledore wasn't aware of the prophecy at this point.
Yeah, that's something that I do want to
Is
kind of get into with our larger discussion. Like, when was this prophecy actually established?
I don't think, if I have it right, I don't think that he knew about the prophecy, or the prophecy wasn't even like
written.
Yeah, foretold at this point.
Right.
So this almost looks like careless of Dumbledore to like, let's just give this 11-year-old a shot at, because of his history with Voldemort, and with Voldemort like looking for ways to like, regain the power that he once had. Dumbledore's like, yeah, he's at a vulnerable point. He's trying to amass power, but he's definitely in a vulnerable state. So fuck it. Let's let this 11-year-old
He'll probably
kid
be fine.
who's intimately connected to him, snowball's chance in hell that he'll actually succeed, but let's give him a shot and see what he's got.
Oh god.
Because it's much more justified once we know the prophecy and Dumbledore's justification for, manipulating Harry and using him for his own ends, or for the greater good, I guess. Yeah. But a bit selfish too, if you or maybe just you wonder how much he actually cares about Harry, or if he just
cares about
him because he needs to lead him to this moment.
Yeah, he probably he wouldn't gave two shits about Harry if he was Neville and Neville was Harry.
Exactly. You're left wondering how benevolent Dumbledore might actually be.
That brings us pretty well to the end of Philosopher's Stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get a nice kind of like heartfelt wrap up with Hagrid giving Harry the photo album of his parents to take with him.
Yep. So as we get to the end of our episode, we'd like to wrap things up with a soon-to-be recurring segment that we're going to get started on this episode. We are putting together a tier list of all the movies and properties that we take a look at on this show. And so at the end of every episode, we will add and potentially rearrange the films on the list as we see fit.
Yeah, so here's how the tier list is going to work after each movie. So we have 6 categories, 3 that kind of denote positive movies, and 3 that sort of denote ones that we didn't like as much as others. So this is how the categories are going to break down. At the top, or S tier, is going to be the greatest films of all time. Going downwards, we're going to have A tier as outstanding. B tier is going to be solid. C tier is going to be need some work. D tier is going to be wake up. And finally, F tier is going to be where movies go to die. So we'd love to hear all of your feedback after we've categorized these films into our tier list, to see if you agree or disagree, and to get your thoughts on the movies that we review.
Yeah, and once we get a couple movies on under our belt, we'll make the tier list public. That way you can share your thoughts in a more engaging manner than just in the comments section. So with that, we'll go ahead and place our first movie, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Aiden, where's that going?
So it's a tough one. It's obviously, you got to give, I feel like, a little more credit to it than some of the other Harry Potters, just because it paved the way for, what came after. It was a really good introduction to the series, faithful adaptation from the books, almost, one of the more faithful if you look at the series as a whole.
Sure.
And, later movies that kind of took liberties with pulling stuff out that maybe shouldn't have been pulled out from the movies.
Right.
So yeah, I'd put this one pretty high. I'd say we both kind of, had come to an understanding that it's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's definitely an outstanding one. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think our little discussion here, I was on kind of the high end of solid, and you were on the lower end of outstanding. So I think that's where we're going to keep it for now anyway, at the bottom end of outstanding.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we'd love to hear what you guys think.
If you agree, please tell us why. We'd love to hear it. And if you disagree, we'd love to hear that too, to get a sense of, why it could be further down that tier list. Let us know.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a place to keep up with us in the meantime or tear us apart for our opinions, you can check us out on X or Twitter at Fratnatics, FRATNATICS, or Fraternal Fanatics on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, pretty much anywhere else.
Looking forward to the next one, guys.
Thanks for listening, everybody.